Hello everyone, I am Melissa and welcome very much here today. I am ambitiously wanting to work my way through a number of the books on the Women's Prize long list, and I've already read two prior to its announcement, but No One Is Talking About This by Patricia Lockwood is the first that I have finished since the long list was announced and because it's on this list. So I want to share with you my thoughts on it today. This book I in part picked up first because, well, actually entirely I picked it up first because it appealed to my very niche interest in cyberculture in literature. And if you know nothing about the book, then that's probably a good place for us to start. You don't know anything it's about. This book is very much about internet culture and the way that an individual interacts with virtual communities and virtual space, as well as a lot of observations and criticisms of the effects of the internet and the shifting infrastructure of socialization because of the internet on our society. That was a convoluted sentence. I don't know if that actually made sense, but I think you probably got my gist. We do not know the name of the main character, but she is internet famous because of a tweet and is essentially traveling the world and sort of in a capacity of influencing. So we get her in like little bits of interviews, things like that from her. But the actual book plays out from her internal perspective. So we're not getting other characters speaking or dialogue or anything. It's very much like the internal processed experience of this character. And she doesn't have a name. And furthermore, the format of this book is a little bit tweet-like. I mean, it doesn't have that like heading or anything, like they don't look like tweets. The whole book takes place in paragraphed sections, some of them just a few lines, but maybe at most 7-8 sentences at a time at most. Really short sections, and these really comprise of opinions, observations, criticisms, or I guess like reflections on little interactions that the character has. Again, all processed through her. There is a very loose plot to the book. It is very loose, and I think that the author's strength and the strength of this book is the author's use of language. There's definitely a bit of satire. There's very witty observations and criticisms, and the author does have a way of sort of shedding light on sometimes the absurdity of our modern culture that is very much showcased and captured in cyberculture and in the internet experience, and the way that the internet and virtual communities are transforming the fabric of socialization and human interaction. I found this book falling into conversation with Benedict Anderson's theory of imagined communities, which is something that I'm still familiarizing myself with. I'm currently reading that book, in part because of this book. It's made me really, really interested in looking at cyberculture in literature from that perspective. The idea of imagined communities is sort of explanatory in its own name. It's the idea that the communities that we form and that we associate with and that we define ourselves and gain our own sense of identity from are in no way inevitable or permanent. Especially Anderson's theory applies to things like nationality, the idea that we associate so much of our identity with a place that we're born, and this is just an entirely imaginary concept. But it also translates to like the smaller communities that we associate ourselves with, even things like fandoms that we would elect to be a part of, such as like, you know, the fan of a celebrity or of a sports team or something like that. And I think that that concept really applies so well to this book because at least very strongly at the beginning of the book, the character is very consumed in this online community, which is called the Portal, which I came to see as simply just the internet as a whole, encompassing a number of different social media platforms. But that this community that she really identifies with, and you get a glimpse of, people inside of this community that she would align with in terms of ideology, and others that she condemns and disagrees with, for the same reasons. And this creates intangible networks of communities that are entirely imaginary. And I think of like a foundational idea of this book, and that Lockwood is playing with, is how these online spaces are shifting our sense of identity, because it's shifting the communities by which we are gleaning and gaining our own sense of identity. I decided that I do not want to spoil the book. I don't want to say anything that might give things away for someone who hasn't read it yet. But I think this idea of imagined communities does really apply as we see the main character and her sense of identity and her worldview and her self-perception evolve based on the communities that she associates and identifies herself with throughout the book. And I think that the author is using this idea to challenge or critique, or maybe just draw attention to the fact that this factor of the internet is shifting the fabric of socialization in our modern society. And I don't know that she is criticizing it so much as just wanting to spotlight it and challenge the fragility of virtual communities. And I think the author does this well in terms of one perspective, but I don't think it is a robust analysis or representation, I suppose, of internet culture as a whole. But in this like specific experience of this character, I think it works. I know that on the long list, Ali Smith's Summer is very contemporary, but possibly aside from that one, I think this is the only book on the long list that is sort of dealing with hyper contemporary issues, ones that are especially complex and unresolved. The function of the internet in our society is so dramatically evolving that it is something really hard to capture in literature. And so I think that might be something that is both good and bad for the book in terms of the long list. I think in a way, books about the internet are doomed to be dated. They immediately become less relevant with time. But I think that the author does do a good job of sidestepping that issue to an extent by not being extremely detailed in terms of the technology or anything like that, but more the psychology of the experience of cyberculture. And I think that has more relevance and more longevity as a concept, and that the book will probably survive better because of that. But just as much as I think the book risks being at a disadvantage because it is about technology, I hope that it is not dismissed because of a false notion of this being niche. And I would actually love to know what you guys think about this. I think that sometimes there's a dismissal that books that are about the internet or about cyberculture, about social media, about technology, but not sci-fi, can be thought of as rather niche. And yet I think this is really a false conception of these books, because in reality, technology is so integrated into our modern society that there's no way to pretend that this isn't a highly relatable concept. I was just interrupted by someone at my door for like an hour and a half, so I don't remember exactly what I was talking about, and the lighting has definitely changed. Anyway, I think I was just wrapping up my thoughts on the book. I would be a little bit surprised if this book were to win, even because I think that in the literary community, books dealing with internet culture are thought of as a bit niche and a very specific genre that is not generally seen as universally relatable, even though I think that is an incorrect judgment, because obviously the internet is universally relatable to at least any of us in the highly developed world. Anyone watching this video, the internet is relatable to. Let's say that, right? So I hope that that won't actually be true, but I think that that will unfortunately be a disadvantage to the book. But I don't know, I guess we'll see. Personally, I did really enjoy the book. I think I enjoyed most the writing style and obviously my personal enjoyment of cyberculture and literature. So I'm really, really glad that this book was brought to my attention, and I did really, really enjoy it. So I would recommend it if this is something that at all appeals to you. It's definitely rather unique, but I think it's totally worth giving a go. So anyway, thank you so much for watching this little review of mine. I will see you all in another video, and please have a very good day. Bye!